Hello everyone, and welcome back to our online discipleship course focusing on Matthew's Gospel, Live Without Limits. This week we're thinking about what it means to rejoice without limits. It's been quite a hard week to think about rejoicing, hasn't it? I guess, like me, you've all seen just those horrific pictures on the news of refugees fleeing their homes, fleeing their country because of war, because they're so desperate that they're willing to risk everything, to risk their own lives, to risk their children's lives, in the hope of finding safety and peace elsewhere. It's hard to think how we can rejoice when things are so awful in those people's lives. When I was planning this little series a few weeks ago, I didn't really have any idea exactly what was going on in the Mediterranean. I'd seen some news reports of refugees dying and drowning, but I hadn't quite realised the scale of what was going on. It hadn't really blown up in the media in the way that it has in the last week or so. But I guess God knew, and when I was planning this, the passage that we're going to look at in a moment, he had in mind for us to think about this week. So I'm going to read, it's Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 to 12. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So in that passage, Jesus is teaching a whole crowd of people and telling them how they can be blessed by God. Some Bibles you'll find will translate that word as happy, but I think that's not a very helpful way of translating it. Blessed has a different nuance than happy. It doesn't just mean that you're smiling and everything's great. If you're blessed, it means that God is showing you some special favour. God is doing something good for you. So as we look through that passage, it's not that these people are necessarily happy. It would be quite weird if some of them were happy. Blessed are those who mourn. Well, you're not happy when you're mourning, when you're grieving because somebody's died. You're not happy. But Jesus says you can be blessed, not because you mourn, but because you will be comforted, because God will show you that special favour of comforting you. And in all of these situations, those who are poor will receive the kingdom of heaven. They're not blessed because they're poor. They're blessed because of what they will receive. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. That is justice. That is seeing things done as they should be. They're not blessed because they're hungry and thirsty. They're blessed because they will be filled. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. The persecution isn't the blessing, but the blessing is that theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus says, rejoice and be glad. Not because things are hard in your life, but because there will be a reward. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. As Christians, we have a different perspective on life, don't we? We know that it's not just about what's happening in the here and now. We know that as Christians, we have a future. We have something to hope for, something amazing to look forward to. That is what Jesus calls our reward in heaven. And it will be amazing because there will be none of the bad things that make life so difficult here and now. In heaven, there will be no sickness. There will be no dying. There will be no war, no famine. There will be no refugees desperately fleeing for their lives. And of course, we will be there with Christ forever and ever. It will be worth it all. Whatever you've gone through, whatever you're going through now, the hope of heaven makes it worthwhile. So I think as we read this passage in the light of everything that's going on in the world, we need to pray, don't we? We need to pray for ourselves that God will help us to have that heavenly perspective when things get tough in our own lives, to recognise the blessings that we're promised, some of which we might enjoy now, but many of which we may have to wait for, sometimes even until we die. But I think even more than that this week, we need to pray for those who are fleeing persecution and war and suffering. Let's pray that they will find the blessings that are talked about here, that they will know the welcome of strangers, that they'll find kindness and love from foreigners. And let's pray that they too will know those future blessings, the hope of heaven, to be with God forever. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. We know that there are many, many people mourning at the moment. Think of the father of those boys washed up on the shore last week, drowned. Pray that he will be comforted. And many, many others in that same situation who've lost dearly loved family members. Pray that they will be comforted with the comfort that God can give and with the love shown to them by Christians and others, welcoming them, giving them home, shelter, family, food, clothing, everything that they've lost. So let's pray. Let's think about what we can do to help, to be that blessing, to show that blessing to others. And let's thank God that we can rejoice in every situation, however desperate it is, that we never need to feel like it's hopeless, that there's always a reason to be grateful, a reason to be glad, not because we suffer, but because of what God will do to restore it, the promises that he has made, the hope that we have of heaven.